The morning light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a soft glow in our bedroom. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the last time I felt truly connected to my husband, Mark. It seemed like a lifetime ago. The hum of the city outside mixed with the sound of birds chirping, a reminder that life continued to move forward while I remained stuck in this emotional purgatory. As I got out of bed, I moved through the familiar motions of my routine, brushing my teeth, washing my face, and slipping into a comfortable sweater. The mirror reflected a woman who was becoming a stranger to herself. My hair was starting to show strands of gray, and my eyes carried the weight of unspoken thoughts. I glanced at Mark still asleep. His presence felt more like an obligation than a comfort. Breakfast was another ritual devoid of warmth. We sat across from each other at the small table in our kitchen, a space once filled with laughter and dreams. Now it felt like an echo chamber for silence. Mark sipped his coffee while reading the newspaper, oblivious to my growing discontent. "Did you see the new art exhibit downtown?" he asked absent-mindedly. "Not yet," I replied flatly, pushing my scrambled eggs around on the plate. Asheville had so much to offer, art galleries bursting with color and life, but somehow it all felt out of reach. After breakfast, I decided to take a walk through our neighborhood. The crisp air was refreshing as I strolled along the tree-lined streets adorned with blooming dogwoods and azaleas. The scent of fresh coffee wafted from local cafes, mingling with the sweet notes of spring flowers. Each step felt like a small rebellion against the monotony that had settled over my life. As I turned onto Maple Street, I noticed movement from next door, a moving truck parked outside our new neighbor's house. Curiosity piqued as I approached, perhaps meeting someone new would break up this fog that had enveloped me for years. "Hey there!" A voice called out from behind the truck. A man emerged, his smile warm and inviting against the backdrop of boxes and furniture. He looked to be in his late 40s with tousled hair and an easygoing demeanor. "Hi," I responded, surprised by how quickly my heart raced at his friendly gaze. "I'm Jake," he introduced himself as he extended his hand. "Nice to meet you." "I'm Lisa." Our handshake lingered just a moment longer than necessary. Something stirred within me, a flicker of excitement long buried under layers of routine. We chatted briefly about Asheville's hidden gems and our favorite local spots, the art galleries on Lexington Avenue and the vibrant farmers market on Saturdays. Each laugh we shared chipped away at my emotional wall, making me feel alive again in ways I hadn't anticipated. "Need any help unpacking?" I offered impulsively before realizing how forward it sounded. "I'd appreciate it," Jake replied with a grin that made him look even more charming. I could use an extra pair of hands. As we worked together that afternoon under the warm sun, lifting boxes and rearranging furniture, there was an undeniable chemistry between us, an energy that crackled in the air like static before a storm. We laughed over misplaced items and shared stories about our lives in Asheville while enjoying each other's company without pretense or expectation. Just then, as if summoned by fate itself, dark clouds rolled in overhead unexpectedly. A sudden downpour began. Rain fell heavily around us as we rushed for cover under the awning of Jake's porch. We stood close together as droplets cascaded down around us, his laughter mingling with mine amidst nature's symphony. And then it happened, a moment suspended in time where everything else faded away except for him and me. Jake leaned closer. Our lips met softly at first but quickly deepened into something more profound, an awakening that sent shockwaves through me like lightning striking dry ground. Before either of us could fully process what had just occurred, we pulled apart abruptly as if burned by an unseen force. A mixture of exhilaration and guilt washed over me like cold water on hot skin. "I should go," I stammered awkwardly while stepping back into reality where consequences awaited. "Yeah, right," Jake replied breathlessly as he rubbed his neck sheepishly but didn't move away from me just yet. Instead he searched my eyes for understanding, an unspoken question lingering between us. I hurried home drenched from both rain and emotions swirling inside me, a tempest brewing beneath calm waters where everything seemed perfect on paper but felt far from it within my heart. Mark would be home soon. He always returned around 6 after work without fail, his predictable routine providing comfort amidst chaos but now feeling suffocating instead. As evening approached, Mark walked through our front door carrying a large box wrapped in shiny paper tied with an elaborate bow, his face beaming with excitement like a child presenting their latest treasure after school. "What's this?" I asked hesitantly while glancing at him warily, my mind still replaying moments spent beside Jake only hours earlier. "A little surprise for you." He beamed proudly before setting it down on our dining table adorned with half-eaten leftovers from lunch, a stark contrast highlighting how disconnected we'd become over time despite these grand gestures meant to revive sparkles long extinguished between us. I opened the box, slowly revealing an expensive piece of jewelry, a delicate necklace shimmering under dim light reflecting his good intentions but also amplifying what lay beneath. Dissatisfaction bubbling just below surface, tension threatening to break free at any moment, now unearthed by recent events unfolding before me today alone outside those rain-soaked walls. Conflicting emotions surged within me, gratitude mixed with guilt over another man's kiss clashing harshly against love once cherished yet now feeling distant somehow. "I thought you'd love this," Mark said softly, breaking silence lingering thick between us like fog settling upon mountains surrounding our home here nestled deep within beautiful Asheville where art thrived alongside nature, reminding us constantly how fleeting moments can be if not cherished enough. Yet tonight felt different, as though two worlds collided, leaving questions unanswered swirling endlessly around corners, waiting patiently until clarity emerged. What did all these feelings mean? And where would they lead? Standing there caught between two paths diverging ahead, the thrill ignited by new beginnings juxtaposed against responsibilities tethering me firmly back toward familiar shores, I couldn't help but wonder which choice would ultimately define who I'd become. The rain fell steadily, a soothing rhythm against the backdrop of my chaotic thoughts. I stood at the window, watching droplets race down the glass, each one a tiny reminder of the choices I faced. The world outside was vibrant, alive with the colors of spring, yet inside, I felt trapped in a monochrome existence. The neighborhood gathering was just around the corner in the park. It promised laughter and connection, a chance to escape my routine. I had seen my neighbor, Jake, setting up his booth earlier. He had that easy smile that made you feel like you were sharing a secret joke. The thought of seeing him again sent a flutter through me, a sensation I hadn't experienced in years. As I walked toward the park, memories of my husband's last attempt to rekindle our marriage flashed through my mind. The expensive watch he had gifted me sat heavy on my wrist like a shackle. His gestures were grand but lacked sincerity, they felt more like obligations than expressions of love. In contrast, Jake's casual kindness felt refreshing and genuine. Upon arriving at the park, I was greeted by familiar faces, neighbors chatting over homemade treats and children playing under the watchful eyes of their parents. Laughter floated through the air like music, and for a moment, I allowed myself to be swept up in it. "Hey there," Jake called as he approached with a plate of cookies. "Want to help me out? These are too good to eat alone." I smiled at him, feeling warmth spread through me despite the chill in the air. "Sure. What can I do?" We spent time together setting up his booth, arranging items and chatting about mundane things that felt anything but mundane when shared with him. Each smile exchanged between us seemed to bridge the gap created by years of emotional distance in my marriage. As dusk began to settle in and lights twinkled overhead like stars come down to earth, we found ourselves standing close together near his booth. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as neighbors mingled around us. Yet in that moment, it felt as if we were enveloped in our own little world. "Do you ever think about what life could be like if you just let go?" he asked suddenly, his gaze searching mine. I hesitated, caught off guard by his question. The rain started again lightly, It drizzled at first but soon turned into a steady downpour that set people scurrying for cover. A few neighbors laughed and ran for shelter while others huddled under awnings. Sometimes, I admitted softly as droplets began to soak through my clothes. Without thinking further, Jake stepped closer until our bodies were almost touching. In that instant, a heartbeat suspended between us. I made a choice driven by impulse rather than reason. We kissed. The world around us faded into nothingness as his lips met mine. It was electric yet tender, a spark igniting something deep within me that had long been dormant. Guilt washed over me immediately after as reality crashed back down, the weight of my marriage pressing heavily on my conscience. What have we done? I whispered as we pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed. I don't know, he replied quietly but earnestly. But it felt right. The rain continued to pour down around us, each drop mingling with our unspoken confusion and desire for something more than what we had known for so long. I shouldn't have, my words trailed off into silence as I stepped back from him instinctively, desperate to regain control over my emotions. Jake ran a hand through his damp hair and looked away for a moment before meeting my gaze again with an intensity that made my heart race once more. You're not alone in this. His words lingered between us like an unacknowledged truth, the acknowledgement of feelings we both knew existed but hadn't dared voice until now. As we stood there drenched in rain and uncertainty, laughter echoed from nearby tents where neighbors gathered under cover from the storm, reminders of lives intertwined yet separate from our own unfolding drama beneath darkening skies. Returning home later that evening felt surreal. Every raindrop on my skin reminded me of what had transpired beneath those clouds, the kiss still tingling on my lips even as guilt settled heavily upon my heart like an oppressive fog. My husband was waiting for me when I walked through the door. He looked up from his book with an expectant smile that quickly faded into concern when he saw my expression. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. I forced a smile but couldn't meet his gaze directly, instead opting to shrug off any questions lingering unspoken between us, questions about emotional distance and unmet needs hanging thickly in the air like smoke after fire has burned out completely. "Just got caught in the rain," I replied lightly while internally grappling with conflicting emotions swirling within me, an intricate dance between loyalty and longing threatening to pull me apart at every turn. He reached out then, fingers brushing against mine briefly before retreating back into comfort zones established over years spent together, a gesture meant to reassure both him and myself despite its hollow echo against what lay hidden beneath layers built up over time, resentment masked by routine familiarity suffocating any chance at genuine connection left unaddressed until now. In bed later that night, bathed only by moonlight filtering through drawn curtains, I lay awake replaying moments shared earlier with Jake over and over again, laughter mingling with stolen glances filled with unspoken promises lingering just beyond reach. But then there were also reminders of all those moments lost within walls built around our marriage, a fortress protecting against change yet imprisoning us both within stagnant waters unable even now to stir beneath surface calmness masking deeper currents threatening upheaval beneath tranquility's facade. What did all these feelings mean? And where would they lead? Caught between two paths diverging ahead, the thrill ignited by new beginnings juxtaposed against responsibilities tethering me firmly back toward familiar shores, I couldn't help but wonder which choice would ultimately define who I'd become. The rain had stopped, but the weight of the moment lingered in the air. I stood at my kitchen window, watching the droplets slide down the glass, tracing paths like my thoughts. Each one felt like a decision I hadn't made yet, a choice lingering just out of reach. What was it about him that stirred something deep within me? The thrill of our accidental touch still echoed in my mind. Our lips met for the briefest second, igniting a spark I thought had long been extinguished. Yet guilt clawed at my insides. I glanced at the photos on the wall, capturing moments from happier times with my husband. They felt like relics from another life, one that seemed increasingly distant. My husband's attempts to rekindle our marriage were well-meaning but only served to highlight the chasm that had formed between us. A new set of golf clubs arrived last week, complete with a note about spending more time together. It felt like a bandage over a wound that needed stitches. As I stood there, lost in thought, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from him, the neighbor, inviting me to join him for coffee at a local cafe. My heart raced at the thought of seeing him again, but fear crept in like an unwelcome guest. What if someone saw us? What would they think? Yet the promise of connection pulled me toward an answer I didn't know how to articulate. I hesitated before typing a response. Sure, what time? My fingers trembled slightly as I hit send. The reply came almost instantly, how about 2 p.m.? Just 2 hours away. The clock ticked down slowly as I distracted myself with chores around the house, dusting shelves and rearranging books that had long been neglected. Each task felt like an attempt to ground myself in reality while my mind drifted toward possibilities that both excited and terrified me. When 2 p.m. finally rolled around, I dressed carefully, a simple blouse and jeans that felt both comfortable and presentable enough for an afternoon coffee date. As I stepped outside into the warm Asheville air, I took a deep breath, letting it fill my lungs with courage and anticipation. The cafe was bustling with life. Patrons chatted animatedly over steaming mugs while baristas called out orders with cheerful efficiency. He was already there when I arrived, seated at a small table by the window, his smile lighting up his face as he caught sight of me. "Hey there," he said warmly as I approached, standing up slightly to pull out my chair for me. "Hi," I replied softly, feeling suddenly shy under his gaze. We settled into easy conversation as we sipped our coffees, talking about everything from local art shows to our favorite hiking trails in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The laughter flowed freely between us. It was refreshing and intoxicating all at once. Yet beneath that surface joy lay an undercurrent of tension, a reminder of what we were both risking. As we spoke about our lives and dreams, I found myself daydreaming about what could be, a life unshackled by obligations and expectations where spontaneity reigned supreme. For just those moments, it felt possible to step away from everything that weighed me down. Then came an accidental brush against each other's hands as we reached for a napkin simultaneously, a fleeting touch that sent jolts through me once more. Our eyes locked for just an instant longer than necessary. There was no denying what lingered between us now. "Sorry," he said softly, withdrawing his hand quickly but not before it left an imprint on my skin, a reminder of everything unspoken hanging in the air around us. "No need to apologize," I managed to reply, my voice barely above a whisper as heat crept up my cheeks. A silence fell over us then, one filled with unsaid words and possibilities hanging heavy in the air like storm clouds ready to burst open again. The thrill of connection battled fiercely against guilt gnawing at my conscience, the fear of crossing lines too blurry to define clearly anymore. Eventually breaking free from those thoughts required effort. We shifted topics back toward lighter matters, the upcoming neighborhood block party, and yet every laugh seemed tinged with something deeper lurking beneath our playful banter. As our time together drew to a close, he leaned back slightly in his chair and studied me intently, a look that made my heart race anew. "I really enjoy spending time with you," he said earnestly. "Me too," I replied quickly before adding cautiously, "but this is complicated." "I know," he acknowledged quietly before looking away briefly before meeting my gaze again with resolve etched across his features. "But sometimes complicated can lead to something beautiful." His words lingered in my mind long after we parted ways outside, the sun casting golden rays across downtown Asheville as people bustled past without noticing how two souls could be so intertwined yet so far apart. Back home again later that evening found me staring blankly into space while dinner simmered on the stove, the aroma filling every corner yet failing utterly to penetrate through layers upon layers of confusion clouding over everything else within me. My husband entered through the door shortly after with another gift, a beautiful vase adorned with intricate designs meant to capture nature's beauty inside our home. But all it did was serve as another reminder of how far apart we had grown despite good intentions lingering beneath every gesture made towards reconciliation between us. "Look what I got you," he exclaimed cheerfully while placing it gently upon our dining table where remnants from previous meals still lingered untouched by either party involved lately. Much like conversations shared between us now seemed dulled beneath layers upon layers built over years spent avoiding true connection altogether, instead opting for surface-level interactions instead. "Thank you," came out automatically, though sincerity felt strained, an echo reverberating back off walls holding memories long since faded into shadows cast across this home which no longer felt quite like ours anymore either way. Later that night found me restless once more, unable even sleep without visions swirling around inside head filled only half-formed dreams drifting through foggy landscapes where choices awaited beckoning forth different paths leading toward unknown destinations ahead. What would happen next? Would this new connection prove worth risking everything already built upon shaky foundations? Or would it crumble beneath weight borne solely from choices made along paths diverging ahead? The questions pressed heavily against chest as sleep eluded grasp altogether, leaving nothing but uncertainty swirling endlessly within darkness surrounding each passing moment until dawn broke anew. The morning light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. I lay there, tangled in the sheets, replaying the events of the previous night. The warmth of his presence lingered on my skin, a stark contrast to the cold reality that awaited me outside those four walls. We spent the night together, and yet here I was, still grappling with an emotional storm that threatened to consume me. As I sat up, I caught sight of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was a message from my husband. "Good morning. Just wanted to say I love you." His words felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. Love? What did that even mean anymore? Our marriage had become a series of hollow exchanges, each one echoing with unfulfilled promises and unspoken truths. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to disturb the stillness that hung in the air. The house felt too big for just me now, filled with memories that had started to feel foreign. The smell of coffee wafted from the kitchen as I padded softly down the hallway. My husband was already awake, pouring himself a cup and humming softly to himself as he often did. "Morning," he said cheerfully, oblivious to the turmoil swirling within me. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. He handed me a cup, his fingers brushing against mine for a fleeting moment that sent an unexpected jolt through me. It was strange how something so simple could stir feelings I thought were long buried. "I was thinking we could go out for dinner tonight," he suggested. "Just us." The idea felt suffocating rather than comforting. Dinner? A ritual we'd performed countless times before without any real connection. "Sure," I said mechanically, trying to mask my internal conflict. After breakfast, I decided to take a walk around our neighborhood park, a place filled with vibrant blooms and laughter from children playing nearby. The sun shone brightly overhead as if mocking my inner chaos. As I strolled along the path lined with cherry blossom trees, memories of my neighbor flooded back, his laughter during our shared moments and the spark ignited during our kiss under the rain. I found myself gravitating toward his apartment, drawn by an invisible thread that seemed to pull tighter with each step. Would he be home? Would he want to see me after what had transpired? The questions buzzed in my mind like bees around blooming flowers. As if answering my unspoken thoughts, I spotted him outside watering his plants, his shirt slightly damp from the morning dew and a smile breaking across his face when he saw me approaching. "Hey there," he called out cheerfully. "Hi," I managed to reply, feeling both exhilarated and terrified at once. "Want some fresh lemonade?" He gestured toward his porch where a pitcher sat glistening in the sunlight. It felt innocent enough, just two neighbors sharing a drink, but we both knew there was more simmering beneath the surface. As we settled onto his porch swing, sipping lemonade and exchanging casual conversation about mundane things like yard work and upcoming local events. Tension crackled between us like electricity in the air before a storm. Last night, he began hesitantly after a pause filled with unspoken words. Yes? My heart raced at what he might say next. I can't stop thinking about it. His gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. I swallowed hard as emotions surged within me, a mix of desire and guilt swirling together in a chaotic dance. Me too, I finally admitted softly. Our conversation drifted into deeper territory as we spoke about dreams long forgotten and passions left unexplored. The world around us faded away until it was just him and me, two souls entangled in something beautiful yet utterly forbidden. Then came another twist. As we leaned closer together on that swing, our hands brushed again, this time lingering longer than necessary, our breaths mingling in anticipation of what might come next. But just then, reality intruded like an unwelcome guest. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, a reminder of everything waiting for me back home. I should get going, I murmured reluctantly as regret washed over me like cold water splashing against warm skin. Yeah, sure. He looked disappointed but masked it well behind a friendly smile. See you later? Of course. The words were easy enough to say but felt heavy with implication as I stood up from the swing reluctantly. The walk home felt longer than usual, each step echoed with uncertainty about what lay ahead for us all. The husband who loved me yet failed to see beyond surface-level gestures, and this new connection that brought life back into dull existence but threatened everything familiar. When I arrived home later that evening for dinner, a meal prepared by someone who had once known how to nourish more than just hunger, I couldn't shake off this feeling gnawing at my insides. Wasn't it too late for us? My husband's attempt at rekindling our flame only highlighted how far apart we had grown over time. Each gift became another reminder of what wasn't being said or done right between us anymore. As we sat across from each other at dinner, his eyes sparkling with hope while mine remained clouded over, I realized nothing would change unless one of us took action. Yet fear held me captive like chains binding tightly around fragile dreams yearning for freedom amid despairing choices made along intertwined paths leading nowhere good anymore. The evening dragged on painfully slow until finally retreating into bed alone once more left echoes reverberating through silence thick enough almost suffocatingly so. Contemplating whether risking everything worth saving could possibly yield something better than mere survival. That night sleep eluded grasp entirely once again while thoughts spiraled endlessly within darkness surrounding every passing moment until dawn broke anew. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting a soft glow on the walls of our bedroom. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my choices pressing down on me. My husband's side of the bed was still untouched, a stark reminder of our emotional distance. The lavish gifts he had showered upon me felt like gilded chains, binding me to a life I was no longer sure I wanted. As I got out of bed, I could hear him in the kitchen, humming a tune that used to bring me comfort but now only amplified my unease. He was making breakfast, another attempt to bridge the gap between us. The smell of bacon wafted through the air, but it did little to stir my appetite. Instead, it reminded me of all the times we had shared meals together before everything changed. "Good morning," he said cheerfully as I entered the kitchen. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. He placed a plate in front of me, overflowing with food. "I thought we could have a nice breakfast together." I nodded absently, my mind elsewhere. The memory of last night lingered like an uninvited guest. The kiss under the rain had ignited something deep within me, a spark that flickered dangerously close to flame. But here I was, trapped in this moment with my husband who seemed blissfully unaware of my inner turmoil. "Do you want to go on that second honeymoon?" he asked suddenly, his voice breaking through my thoughts. "What?" My heart raced at his suggestion. A trip meant time away from everything, an escape from my reality. But could it also mean an attempt to revive something that felt irreparably broken? I booked us a cabin in the mountains, he continued, excitement lighting up his face. We can spend some time together and reconnect. The Blue Ridge Parkway loomed large in my mind, the scenic overlooks where we once shared laughter and dreams. But now those memories felt tainted by what had happened with my neighbor. I glanced out the window toward his house, half expecting to see him there, as if he could sense my internal conflict. I don't know, I murmured, pushing food around on my plate. He reached across the table and took my hand gently in his. I just want us to be happy again. His sincerity tugged at something inside me, a flicker of guilt mixed with longing for what we once had. But how could I allow myself to feel content when another part of me was yearning for something else? Something more thrilling yet terrifying. I'll think about it, I finally said, pulling my hand away and standing up abruptly. As I cleared the dishes from the table, I felt his gaze on me, searching and hopeful, but it only intensified my discomfort. The thought of spending time alone with him felt suffocating when all I wanted was freedom from these expectations. After breakfast, I excused myself to take a walk outside, to breathe in fresh air and clear my head. The neighborhood park was nearby, its blooming flowers and vibrant colors offered a stark contrast to my gray mood. As I wandered along familiar paths lined with trees swaying gently in the breeze, thoughts drifted back to him, the neighbor who had unknowingly awakened desires long dormant within me. There he was at last, standing by his porch as if waiting for me to arrive. His gaze met mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. It felt electric yet comforting all at once. "Hey," he called out casually as though we hadn't shared anything more than friendly banter before. "Hi," I replied softly, unable to hide the fluttering in my chest. "Want some company?" He gestured toward an empty bench beneath an old oak tree. I hesitated but found myself nodding almost instinctively as if drawn by some invisible force beyond reason or logic. Sitting beside him felt like stepping into another world, one where worries faded into laughter and easy conversation flowed effortlessly between us. We talked about nothing and everything, the weather, our favorite local spots, but beneath it all lay unspoken words heavy with meaning and unfulfilled desires simmering just below the surface. And then he looked at me differently, his expression shifting from casual interest to something deeper as our eyes locked momentarily longer than necessary. "I've been thinking about you," he admitted quietly after a pause that stretched between us like a taut string ready to snap. My heart raced at his admission, every rational thought fled as if caught in a whirlwind of emotions swirling around us both. "You shouldn't," I managed weakly even though every fiber of my being craved more than just fleeting moments stolen away from reality. He leaned closer slightly, warmth radiated off him like sunlight breaking through clouds after rain, a sensation so intoxicating yet perilous all at once. "What if," he hesitated before continuing cautiously, "what if there's something worth exploring here?" A rush of adrenaline coursed through me. Temptation beckoned like an alluring siren song promising adventure beyond imagination while simultaneously threatening everything familiar tethering me back home. All those years spent building stability amidst chaos now hung precariously on fragile strings woven by choices made long ago. I opened my mouth but no words came forth. Instead silence enveloped us both, a heavy pause pregnant with possibility lingering just out of reach until finally. A sudden realization struck hard. What if this path led nowhere good? What if indulging these feelings shattered lives beyond repair? But perhaps there lay hidden truths waiting patiently beneath layers built over decades spent conforming rather than truly living. Before another moment passed filled only with uncertainty, a decision crystallized within clarity born from chaos. "I can't do this." My voice trembled slightly yet held firm against rising tides threatening overwhelm any semblance left intact within this fragile heart torn between two worlds. His expression shifted abruptly, disappointment flashed across features previously lit by hope before retreating into shadows cast by doubt emerging anew. And just like that, everything changed once more, leaving behind echoes reverberating throughout, silence thick enough, almost suffocatingly so. The rain drummed a steady rhythm against the window, a familiar soundtrack that had become both comforting and disconcerting. I sat on the couch, the soft light from the lamp illuminating the pages of a book I couldn't focus on. My mind was elsewhere, tangled in thoughts of him, my neighbor, my distraction, my secret. The door creaked open, and my husband stepped inside, shaking off droplets like a dog returning from a walk. He held a bouquet of flowers, vibrant and fresh. "Look what I got for you," he said with an earnest smile that felt almost foreign now. "Thanks," I replied, forcing enthusiasm into my voice as I accepted the blooms. They were beautiful but felt like an empty gesture in contrast to the storm brewing within me. The flowers were not what I craved, they were mere tokens in a game where sincerity had long been absent. As he placed them in a vase on the kitchen table, I caught sight of his reflection in the window, a man trying to hold on to something slipping through his fingers. His shoulders sagged slightly as he turned away from me, oblivious to the turmoil swirling in my heart. Later that evening, while he settled into his routine with a book and TV, my phone buzzed with a message from my neighbor. Just a simple "hope you're doing well," but it sent warmth flooding through me. It was these small exchanges that made me feel alive again. I glanced over at my husband. He was lost in his world, unaware of how distant we had become. The irony struck hard. He was trying to mend our marriage with gifts while I found solace in stolen moments with someone else. The next day brought an unexpected visitor, an old friend from college who had moved back to Asheville after years away. We met at our favorite cafe downtown, where the smell of roasted coffee mingled with laughter and chatter around us. "Wow, you look great," she exclaimed as we hugged tightly. The warmth of her presence was refreshing amidst my emotional chaos. "I'm hanging in there," I replied cautiously, unsure how much to reveal about my life. As we chatted over lattes and pastries, she shared stories about her recent travels and adventures, her freedom contrasting sharply with my own stagnant existence. "Are you happy?" she asked suddenly, her eyes searching mine for truth. I hesitated before responding. I'm okay." Her brow furrowed slightly as if sensing the underlying discontent. "You need to do what makes you happy," she urged gently. Her words echoed long after our meeting ended. Later that evening, as I returned home and settled into bed beside my husband's sleeping form, I couldn't shake off her question. What did happiness look like for me? That night, sleep eluded me as memories flooded back, of youthful dreams and aspirations left unfulfilled. The weight of unspoken truths pressed heavily against my chest until dawn broke through the curtains like an unwelcome guest. In the days that followed, each encounter with my neighbor became charged with unspoken tension, a lingering gaze here, an accidental brush there. Each moment ignited feelings that had lain dormant for so long within me. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes outside our homes, a mundane task turned electric. I caught him watching me intently as raindrops began to fall softly around us. It was then that we shared another kiss under the rain. It felt both reckless and liberating all at once. His lips were warm against mine despite the chill in the air. Time seemed to suspend itself around us as if nothing else mattered but this moment, a stolen fragment of joy amidst chaos. As I pulled away, breathless yet exhilarated by what just transpired between us, reality crashed down hard once more when I returned home later that evening to find flowers waiting on our kitchen table again, this time accompanied by a handwritten note expressing love and commitment from my husband. The juxtaposition stung painfully. Here lay proof of his attempts to salvage what we once had, while all I could think about was how fleeting happiness felt compared to this bittersweet ache growing inside me. I took those flowers into my hands but couldn't bear their beauty any longer. They served only as reminders of everything missing between us. The laughter that no longer filled our home or shared dreams now cast aside like forgotten trinkets gathering dust on shelves. Days turned into weeks filled with more secret meetings under darkened skies and hushed whispers exchanged behind closed doors until one fateful evening when everything changed again. Returning home late one night after spending hours lost in conversation with him at our local park, a place where laughter mingled freely among blooming flowers, I found myself standing frozen before our front door upon hearing muffled voices coming from inside our house. Curiosity pricked at me as I leaned closer against the frame listening intently. It was unmistakably my husband's voice mingling with another familiar tone, the sound sending chills racing down my spine like icy fingers gripping tightly around secrets long buried beneath layers of complacency. What could possibly be happening? Anxiety surged through me as dread settled heavily upon my chest like an anchor dragging me deeper into unknown waters threatening to swallow whole everything left unexamined within this fragile existence we'd built together over years spent navigating life's challenges side by side. With every ounce of courage gathered within myself, and against all instincts urging caution, I pushed open that door only to be met by a sight forever etched into memory. My husband sitting across from an unexpected guest, his own mother, who looked equally perplexed yet determined regarding whatever conversation they'd been having moments before arriving at this pivotal moment. "Mom," he said softly upon noticing me standing there wide-eyed and heart racing wildly beneath layers upon layers built up over time. And just like that, the ground beneath me shifted irrevocably, leaving uncertainty swirling thickly around us all. The air in the house felt thick with unspoken words. My husband, standing before me, seemed to be waiting for a sign, a hint of what was brewing inside me. I could see the worry etched on his face. He had tried so hard lately to bridge the gap that had widened between us. His latest gesture, a surprise dinner at our favorite restaurant, had been an attempt to rekindle something lost. But as I stood there, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice breaking through the silence. I nodded, though my heart raced with uncertainty. The truth was, I was far from okay. Each moment spent with him felt like a reminder of what we once shared and what now lay in tatters. Meanwhile, thoughts of my neighbor flooded my mind, his laughter, the way his eyes sparkled when he spoke about art and life. Those moments were intoxicating and terrifying all at once. That evening, as we sat across from each other at the table set for two, candlelight flickering softly between us, I found myself lost in thought. My husband talked about work and plans for the future. His voice became a distant hum against the backdrop of my internal struggle. Each word felt like an anchor pulling me deeper into an ocean of confusion. "I've been thinking," he said suddenly, leaning forward as if to pull me back into reality. "Maybe we should consider a trip, just the two of us." "A trip?" The idea hung in the air like an unanswered question. My mind raced to images of the Blue Ridge Parkway, the winding roads that offered breathtaking views and moments of quiet reflection. But those images faded quickly when I thought about sharing them with him rather than with someone who truly understood me. "That could be nice," I managed to reply, though it felt more like an obligation than enthusiasm. Later that night, as I lay in bed beside him, sleep eluded me entirely. Instead, thoughts swirled around my mind like leaves caught in a gust of wind. The kiss under the rain replayed itself endlessly, each second etched vividly into my memory. I longed for that spark again but feared what it would mean for everything else. The next day brought unexpected clarity as I decided to take a walk through downtown Asheville, a place filled with vibrant art galleries and local cafes that always stirred something within me. As I strolled along familiar streets, I noticed how alive everything seemed, the laughter spilling from nearby cafes and musicians strumming their guitars on street corners. Then there he was as my neighbor, leaning casually against his porch railing, a sketchpad resting on his lap as he sketched scenes around him with fluid strokes. His presence pulled at something deep inside me. It was magnetic and terrifying all at once. "Hey," he called out cheerfully as I approached. "Hi," I replied softly, feeling warmth spread through my chest despite myself. We exchanged small talk about art and life while each word hung heavy with unacknowledged tension between us. The way he looked at me made every mundane conversation feel electric. It was as if we were both acutely aware of the line we were towing together yet choosing not to acknowledge it outright. And then came another twist. "I've been thinking about having an art show," he said casually, but then paused as if weighing his words carefully before continuing. "I'd love for you to come." "Of course." "That sounds amazing," I replied without hesitation, excitement bubbling up within me despite any reservations nagging at my conscience. As our conversation flowed naturally from one topic to another, time slipped away unnoticed until dusk began settling over Asheville like a soft blanket draping over everything familiar yet new again. When we finally parted ways that evening after sharing laughter and lingering glances that lingered too long for comfort, it struck me just how much I craved this connection in contrast to my current reality back home. Later that night, when sleep still evaded me, I found myself staring up at the ceiling wondering how everything had spiraled so far beyond anyone's control or expectations. The next morning brought another confrontation, this time with myself more than anyone else, as memories resurfaced unbidden, images from our last intimate evening together replayed vividly in flashes against closed eyelids. I could almost hear his voice whispering promises beneath layers of sunlight filtering through leaves overhead. But those memories were abruptly interrupted by my husband's return home early from work, his presence filling our living room with familiar warmth yet feeling foreign somehow amidst this turmoil brewing within me. "Hey. You're home early," I managed to say while forcing a smile onto my face despite feeling anything but happy inside. "I wanted to surprise you," he replied cheerfully before producing another gift, a small box wrapped neatly in bright paper adorned with ribbons tied perfectly atop its surface. As he handed it over expectantly, I couldn't help but wonder if this would be enough to fill voids left by feelings long buried beneath layers upon layers. Yet deep down, I feared that nothing would ever truly suffice anymore, not even lavish gifts or romantic dinners shared across candlelit tables. Just then, an unexpected knock echoed throughout our home, breaking through layers upon layers built up over time. My heart raced anew as uncertainty swirled thickly around us all once more. The knock reverberated through the house, a stark reminder of the life I had built and the choices I faced. My heart raced, each thud of my pulse echoing the uncertainty that loomed over me. I hesitated at the door, torn between the familiar and the unknown. "Who is it?" I called out, my voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of apprehension. "It's me," came a familiar voice, "my husband, Mark." His tone was casual, but I could sense an urgency beneath it. I opened the door slowly, revealing his concerned expression framed by the dim light of the hallway. He stood there holding a small package wrapped in bright paper, a smile attempting to mask his worry. "I thought you might like this," he said, extending it toward me. I took it from him, my fingers brushing against his briefly. A shiver ran down my spine, not from affection but from the weight of expectation that hung in the air between us. "Thanks," I replied flatly, unsure how to bridge the chasm that had grown wider with each passing day. As I unwrapped the gift, a delicate bracelet adorned with tiny charms representing moments we had shared, I felt a pang of guilt wash over me. How could he still believe that material tokens could mend our fractured connection? The memories attached to those charms felt like shadows of what once was. "I thought we could have dinner together tonight," he suggested, his eyes searching mine for a flicker of enthusiasm. "Sure," I answered mechanically, my mind drifting back to moments spent with my neighbor, Chris, the laughter we shared under rain-soaked skies and stolen glances that ignited something deep within me. Mark's expression brightened momentarily before he turned serious again. "We need to talk about us." The words hung in the air like heavy fog. Talk about us? What did that even mean anymore? Did he sense my drifting heart? The thought sent a wave of panic coursing through me. "Okay, I said cautiously as I led him into the living room where silence enveloped us like an unwelcome guest. The conversation began uneasily. Mark recounted plans for a second honeymoon, hoping to rekindle our spark in some distant locale filled with sunsets and romance. Each word felt like an anchor dragging me deeper into waters I no longer wanted to navigate. "Remember when we went to Charleston?" he asked wistfully, his eyes lighting up with nostalgia. "Yes," I replied absently, recalling not just our trip but also how different things felt then, how alive we both were. "Let's make new memories," he urged gently. My heart twisted painfully at his sincerity, yet all I could think about was Chris and how effortlessly he made me feel seen and understood. The weight of my choices pressed heavily upon me as our conversation drifted into silence once more. Later that evening, as Mark busied himself in the kitchen preparing dinner, a gesture meant to draw us closer, I stepped outside onto our porch for a breath of fresh air. The night was warm and inviting. Fireflies danced around me while stars twinkled above like distant promises waiting to be fulfilled. But all I could think about was Chris, the way his laughter echoed in my mind and how those fleeting moments together made everything else fade away. Suddenly feeling bold, or perhaps reckless, I took out my phone and sent him a quick text, "Can we talk?" The seconds dragged on painfully before my phone buzzed in response, "Of course." "When?" I glanced back inside at Mark bustling around with pots and pans before typing back, "Now." The anticipation surged within me as I walked down our driveway toward Chris's place just across the street. My heart raced not only from excitement but also from fear of what this meeting might mean for everything that lay ahead. When Chris opened his door, surprise flickered across his face before morphing into something warmer, a genuine smile that made my insides flutter unexpectedly. "Hey. What's up?" he asked casually but with an undertone that suggested he sensed more than mere casualness behind my visit. "I needed to see you," I admitted softly as if speaking any louder would shatter this fragile moment between us. He stepped aside, allowing me entry into his cozy living room filled with eclectic art pieces reflecting his vibrant personality. It felt different here, alive in ways my own home had long ceased to be. "What's going on?" he asked again as we settled onto opposite ends of his couch. "I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending everything is fine." My voice trembled slightly as vulnerability washed over me like a tidal wave crashing against rocky shores. Chris studied me intently, concern etched across his features deepened by empathy for what lay beneath my surface facade, the turmoil swirling within like storm clouds threatening rain at any moment. "You deserve happiness," he said quietly after what felt like an eternity had passed between us, a moment suspended in time where every unspoken word weighed heavily on both our hearts. "I'm scared," I confessed finally, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes despite desperately wishing they wouldn't fall here now, not when clarity seemed so close yet so far away simultaneously. His gaze softened further, warmth radiated from him as if drawing me closer somehow without needing physical touch, a connection forged through understanding rather than mere desire alone. Just then, an unexpected knock echoed throughout Chris's home, breaking through layers upon layers built up over time. My heart raced anew as uncertainty swirled thickly around us all once more. Chris looked toward the door instinctively while tension crackled between us like static electricity before shifting back towards each other again, the weight of unspoken words pressing down heavier than ever before now looming large amidst this precarious moment teetering on edge. "Do you want to answer it?" His voice held an edge laced with apprehension, each syllable tinged by awareness that whoever stood outside might alter everything about our lives forevermore. "No." My response burst forth impulsively, fear gripped tightly around every syllable uttered aloud, almost instinctively shielding what lay hidden beneath layers upon layers built up over time. But even as those words left my lips, a sudden realization dawned upon me, that perhaps this wasn't just about avoiding confrontation anymore, it was about choosing which path led toward freedom instead. And standing there at this crossroads now, between love lost and love found, I couldn't help but wonder whether either choice would ever truly lead anywhere safe or certain again.